Hey there, it's Wednesday, which means it's time for another Q&A session with yours truly, your friendly neighborhood book editor. I have my very fuzzy and fluffy assistant behind me, so don't mind him. Hopefully he isn't too distracting. Today I am going through questions you've left me in the comments about the publishing industry or how to write a better story. So thank you to everyone who has been engaging with these sessions. I really enjoy doing them and speaking more directly to you. If you haven't yet joined this amazing community of writers, please go ahead and hit that subscribe button. I promise you won't regret it. And while you're down there, go ahead and hit that thumbs up button because it really helps out my channel and means a lot to me. I also have a free resource in the description below for anyone who has a manuscript draft and is looking for a way to self-evaluate it. It's called my Story Self-Assessment Worksheet. I know how hard it can be to see your manuscript for what it is when you're so deep in it. So it's going to ask you some prompting questions that hopefully illuminate certain strong and weak points in your story. Downloading that's also going to sign you up for my newsletter. And I promise you guys, there are some amazing tips being given out in my newsletter. I reach out to literary agents and traditionally published authors, and they share their experiences, their insights, their expertise, so you don't want to miss out on that. If you want to go straight to the newsletter link, it is in the description as well. Let's dive into the first question today. Hello, Alyssa. If an agent says on their website that they will take a set amount of time to get back to you and that amount of time has come and gone, with a good fortnight to spare, should I chase it up? They have missed the deadline that they themselves have put down, but on the other hand, chasing them might make them more inclined to say no. What are your thoughts on this? This is a disappointing place to be in because the agent says that they're going to get back to you within this time and then that deadline passes, right? What do you do? Now, I'm going to be honest with you. It is highly, highly likely that the agent simply has not gotten to your query yet. I know that is disappointing to hear because you've waited all this time, potentially even months, and you're saying it's still just sitting in their inbox. Unfortunately, probably yes. Now, from the agent's perspective, they are inundated with so many submissions that they are pretty much under an avalanche all the time, and it is very hard for them to get through their queries in a reasonable time frame. That's why it typically takes months for them to respond to queries. But on the flip side, the reason that they let queries sit so long is because they do genuinely want to give each query its due time and attention. And to do that, it simply takes time to get through them all. One agent referenced that it takes her 10 minutes to review each query, so if she only has 2 hours in a day, maybe on a Friday afternoon to go through her query inbox, she's only gonna get through so many, right? So that's all to just give you context for why you probably haven't heard back from that agent. Now, if they say, we'll get back to you within this time frame and that time frame has passed, there is no harm in you sending a follow-up email. Is it going to significantly alter your agent's response one way or another? No. What it might do is bump your query to the top of their inbox and maybe they will take a closer look at it quicker, but it is not going to change their mind one way or another. It's not going to make them more likely to say no because you nudged them. That's not the case at all. So one simple, polite nudge is completely warranted and fine and not going to hurt your chances of working with that agent. But also realize that the truth is they probably truly have not read your query yet. So this next one isn't really a question, but it's still something I want to respond to. Not gonna lie, I'm in a really depressive place with this process. I read my work back and I'm proud of it, but querying is so disheartening. Then I read stats that there's like a 1% to 3% chance of getting published. It feels like a pipe dream. I'm not gonna sugarcoat it. Querying freaking sucks. In most cases, it takes a long time, months, if not years, to get a positive response. Sometimes you don't end up finding an agent for this book, and it was just all this time and energy that you put into it, and you're not feeling like you're getting that response from the literary agent community. I totally hear you, and I get it. But what I think is not productive to think about, especially when you're querying, is this idea of stats. So I don't think there's any proof or any evidence or merit behind a stat that you have 1% to 3% chance of getting published. The truth is there is no universal statistic that I can point to and say, hey, here's your chance of getting traditionally published. Here's your chance of getting a literary agent. A stat like that just doesn't exist. Is it true that there are far more authors querying than authors who receive representation? Yes, but I really don't think it's productive for us to think in terms of statistics. What I think is more productive is you setting your own objectives and intentions. How important is it for you to be traditionally published? If this is your dream, the only way to go after that dream is to keep going and persevering through the rejections and keep querying, keep writing, keep revising, and keep trying. That is the only way to do it. And all those authors who you see on the shelf went through exactly what you are going through. They saw the rejections, they were discouraged, they wanted to give up, but they didn't. And then they ended up there, right? That is the truth. Of course, some might have had an easier path to publication than others, but I promise you, plenty of those authors went through exactly what you're going through and felt the same doubts that you are feeling. Now, if you take a hard look at what you're trying to do and decide that actually traditional publishing is not that important to you, and you just want to see this book out in the world, that's what's important to you, then you could totally consider another form of publishing, especially going the indie publishing route, and maybe that would give you the same sense of fulfillment. But if it is traditional publishing you are seeking, please try to clear your head of any statistics, because they just aren't right and they're just not necessarily true and they're just not helpful. I don't know if it's true that 1% of querying authors get a literary agent, but what does it matter? The statistics, right? What matters is that if you want to go that route, that's what you have to do. So I would say take a step back, take a breath, and by the way, if you need to pause querying for a bit, do it. Absolutely. The publishing industry will always be there, and you can always approach it again. If you need a break, take it. Take this time to think about what you want out of your publishing journey. And if it's not the traditional route, then there's other options out there. And I want you to be open to what's gonna make you feel the most fulfilled. We have time for one more question today. How do I deal with the fear of not finishing? Obviously, writing a novel is a long-term commitment, and I started a rewrite second draft back in the beginning of March. I'm at 26,000 words as of early May, and I feel like I'm a bit off track with my goal of hitting 100K by beginning of October. Problem is, I feel it's harder and harder to start and continue, and each session I tire out faster before the hour mark. I know these are all signs I should take a break and slow down, but I fear that taking a break will completely derail me and result in an unfinished product, which I absolutely do not want. Couple of things here. If you're struggling to finish your draft, the first point I want to raise is to detach from the idea of having to reach a certain word count mark. I understand why you set this goal for yourself, because it makes the writing process more digestible if you say, I want to have 100,000 words by October, which means I have to do 10,000 this month, 10,000 this month, and break it down that way. I get it. However, no one is saying this novel has to be 100,000 words. You're just saying that. And maybe it actually doesn't. Maybe you're much closer than you think to the end, because maybe it's only 70,000 words, right? You don't need those extra 30,000 words. Or maybe the story is longer. I would hope not, especially if you're trying to traditionally publish, because typically 100,000 words is around the max for adult fiction for traditional publishing. But maybe the truth is that this story is a 2-part series and it needs to go on for longer. You know, allow the story to be the length that it needs to be. And I would detach from the idea that you have to write a certain word count. I would also detach from the idea that you have to write a certain number of words per session. Having a goal is great, and having a deadline works well for many authors, but it can also become stifling, which it seems like it has in your case. And then you just get burnt out and discouraged because you didn't meet that writing goal. So the next time that you have that writing time and you sit down, I would encourage you to let yourself free write. Don't give yourself a word count you have to reach. Do some exploratory work and work on a scene maybe that you've had in your head, but haven't had a chance to sit down and write yet. Or maybe even go back and revise some of the manuscript you already have if that feels more compelling to you. Go wherever your brain and your creativity wants to take you in that moment. Give yourself that flexibility. Don't be so prescriptive with what you have to complete with each of your writing sessions. I have 2 videos that I'll link in the description that might be helpful for you. One on tips for finishing your book and one for overcoming writer's block. So check that out, and I hope there are some helpful nuggets in there. Thank you so much for watching this session today. If you have a question you'd like to ask, drop it in the comments here and it will be added to my queue. Before you head out, please go ahead and hit that thumbs up button. It really does help out my channel. Hit that subscribe button to join this amazing community. And don't forget your free story self-assessment worksheet and my newsletter link in the description below. Thanks so much for watching and happy writing.